You said that last time too, Claire reminded him. And you walked out smiling. He groaned, dragging his hands over his face. You don't fight fair. She leaned closer, whispering against his ear. Neither does Lila. The name sent a shiver through him, sharper and deeper than before. For the first time, Ethan wasn't just afraid of being seen as Lila. He was afraid of not being her again. Saturday morning sunlight spilled through the curtains, catching on the powder blue dress still hanging neatly in Claire's closet. Ethan had been staring at it for 10 minutes, torn between awe and dread. The memory of the cafe still hummed in his chest, ordinary, safe, almost thrilling, but this dress wasn't made for ordinary. It whispered something bolder. Claire patted in barefoot, holding her coffee. You've been staring at that dress like it's going to bite you. Ethan flushed. I was just thinking about her. He hesitated, then nodded. About how much I miss her when I'm not her. Claire set her mug down, a smile tugging at her lips. Then maybe it's time for another step. Ethan stiffened. Another cafe? She shook her head. Bigger. Dinner out. A place with real menus, real waiters. Somewhere you and I can sit for an hour as Ethan and Claire or, she tilted her head knowingly, as Claire and Lila. Ethan's heart lurched. Dinner? In public? No way. People will notice. They'll stare. Claire crossed to him, brushing her fingers over the dress's soft fabric. Maybe. Or maybe they'll do what Megan did at New Year's. Treat you like you belong. Because you do. His breath hitched. He wanted to say no. He wanted to slam the door on the thought. But deep down, the idea lit something inside him, a dangerous flicker of longing. I can't, he whispered. Claire smiled gently. You don't have to decide right now. Just think about it. Try it on. Sit with the idea. That night, when she went to bed, Ethan found himself in front of the mirror again. Slowly, carefully, he slipped into the powder blue dress. He adjusted the necklace, smoothed the fabric, and stared at the reflection staring back. Not Ethan. Not halfway. Entirely Lila. And for the first time, instead of asking, what if people see me? He whispered something else. What if they already could? The question left him trembling, caught between fear and something far more dangerous, hope. The restaurant Claire chose wasn't flashy. It wasn't a 5-star, chandelier hanging over your head kind of place. It was a cozy Italian bistro tucked between a bookstore and a florist, the kind of spot where couples lingered over candlelight and waiters remembered your name. Still, to Ethan, it felt like a stage. Every flicker of candlelight was a spotlight, every clink of silverware a warning bell. His palms were clammy as he stood in front of the mirror at home, the powder blue dress hugging him gently, Claire's careful makeup softening his face until even he could barely see Ethan underneath. Breathe, Claire said from behind him, adjusting the wig's curls. You're beautiful. You belong. He swallowed hard. What if someone sees through it? What if they know? Claire met his eyes in the mirror. Then they'll see someone brave enough to show up anyway. And that's more powerful than anything they could think. Minutes later, they walked into the bistro hand in hand. The warmth of the place washed over them, flickering candles, soft chatter, the smell of garlic and rosemary. Ethan and Lila felt every pair of eyes turn. Except, they didn't. A waiter glanced their way, smiled, and led them to a small table by the window. Welcome, he said warmly. Can I start you ladies off with some water? Ladies. The word nearly knocked the air from Ethan's lungs. He managed a nod, his heart hammering. As they settled into their seats, Claire grinned over the menu. See? Easy. Ethan clutched the edge of his napkin. Too easy. He didn't even blink. Because there was nothing to blink at, Claire replied. You're just Lila, out for dinner. The meal unfolded in waves. Ordering pasta without his voice cracking. Laughing at Claire's terrible impression of her boss. The waiter checking in politely, calling them you two ladies again. Each moment chipped away at the wall Ethan had built inside his head. By dessert, something terrifying happened. He relaxed. He twirled his fork absently in a slice of tiramisu, catching his reflection in the restaurant's darkened window. For once, he didn't see a man in a dress, terrified of discovery. He saw Lila smiling, alive, and sitting across from someone who believed in her. Claire noticed. "What's that look for?" He shook his head, voice soft. I think I liked this too much." Claire reached across the table, taking his hand. "Good. That means you're starting to see what I've seen all along." The words sank deep, leaving him both exhilarated and unsettled. Because she was right. Walking out into the night air, Lila felt different. Taller. Freer. For the first time, the city didn't look like a threat. It looked like possibility. And though Ethan tried to shove the thought away, it wouldn't leave him alone. What if tonight wasn't a costume? What if this was who he was meant to be? They didn't speak much on the drive home. Claire hummed softly along with the radio, but Ethan and Lila sat in silence, staring out the window at the blur of streetlights. Every moment from the restaurant replayed in his mind, the waiters, ladies, the easy laughter, the way dessert had tasted sweeter because it had been eaten as her. When they finally stepped into the apartment, Ethan collapsed onto the couch, kicking off the heels with a groan. "My feet are killing me." Claire laughed, setting her purse on the counter. "Welcome to womanhood." Ethan buried his face in his hands. "I can't believe I did that." "You mean she did that," Claire corrected gently. He looked up at her, eyes wide and conflicted. "Claire, what if I'm starting to like this too much? What if I don't want to stop?" Claire crossed the room and sat beside him, her expression steady. "Then don't." He blinked. "It's not that simple." "Yes, it is," she said firmly. "You don't have to figure out forever tonight. You just have to admit what feels true right now." Ethan's throat tightened. He turned toward the darkened window, catching his reflection, wig slightly askew, makeup smudged, the powder blue dress still shining faintly under the lamp. For once, it didn't look like an act. It looked like someone waiting to be acknowledged. "I don't hate her anymore," he whispered. Claire smiled, reaching for his hand. "That's not nothing. That's everything." They sat in silence for a while, the hum of the heater filling the room. Then Claire stood, pulling him gently up. "Come on. One more look." She led him to the bedroom mirror, switching on the soft lamp nearby. Ethan stared at his reflection, Lila's reflection. Tonight wasn't just survival. Tonight had been proof. Claire rested her chin on his shoulder, their eyes meeting in the glass. "So, what do you see?" His voice cracked, but he forced the words out. "I see someone I don't want to lose." Claire's arms slid around his waist, grounding him. "Then don't lose her. Let her stay." Tears stung his eyes. He'd never felt so vulnerable, so raw. Yet for the first time, the fear wasn't about being exposed, it was about what would happen if he buried her again. As the clock ticked past midnight, Ethan realized the question had changed. It wasn't "who am I when I'm Lila?" anymore. It was "who am I when I'm not?" The week after the dinner outing felt different. Ethan moved through the hospital halls as usual, clipboard in hand, scrubs neat, voice steady, but in the back of his mind, the echo of another name whispered with every step. Lila. At home, the shift was even stronger. The powder blue dress hung openly in Claire's closet now, no longer tucked away. The lavender blouse found its way into laundry loads without secrecy. And some nights, when Ethan stared at his reflection in the mirror, he didn't even bother changing back. He went to bed as Lila, waking up tangled in sheets that smelled faintly of makeup and perfume. It scared him, but it also soothed him. One Wednesday evening, Claire came home to find him curled on the couch in leggings and the blouse, hair still damp from a shower, wig set neatly on his head. He looked up nervously, expecting her to tease. Instead, she just smiled and sat beside him. "Rough day." He exhaled, tension draining. "Yeah, but she made it better." Claire leaned her head against his shoulder. "See? Lila isn't a problem. She's part of the solution." The words sank deep, both terrifying and comforting. Over the next few days, their routines blurred. Grocery runs became moments where Claire nudged him to pick up mascara or nail polish, just in case. Movie nights turned into Claire experimenting with new hairstyles on him. Even quiet mornings felt different, Ethan sipping coffee in sweatpants, Claire calling him Ethan one moment and Lila the next, as though the names were interchangeable. It was intoxicating and destabilizing. One night, lying in bed, Ethan whispered into the dark, "What if people at work found out?" Claire's hand traced lazy circles on his arm. "Then you'd have to face you in both worlds. But you don't have to rush that. For now, you choose where Lila exists." He swallowed hard. "But what if I want her to exist more?" Claire kissed his shoulder, her voice soft but sure. "Then she will." The silence stretched heavy after that. Ethan didn't answer, because he knew the truth was already unfolding whether he spoke it or not. A few days later, Claire surprised him at breakfast with a folded flyer. "Look," she said casually. "There's a small gallery opening downtown this weekend. Wine, art, music. Casual, but classy. Lots of people, but nobody we know." Ethan frowned. "And why are you telling me this?" Her grin was playful, but her eyes were steady. "Because I think Lila would love it." His stomach dropped. Another step. Bigger than coffee. Bigger than dinner. And yet, as he stared at the flyer, he realized the question wasn't if anymore. It was when. Saturday evening arrived too quickly. Ethan had spent the whole day pacing the apartment, telling himself he'd back out, that it was too soon, too risky. Yet when Claire laid the outfit on the bed, a sleek black skirt, a soft cream blouse, and a pair of modest heels, he found himself slipping into it almost without thinking. "You don't have to go through with this," Claire said gently, fastening the bracelet around his wrist. "But if you do, I'll be with you every step." Ethan swallowed hard, staring at his reflection. The wig was styled neatly, the makeup subtle but polished. In the mirror, he didn't see someone playing dress-up. He saw someone who could stand quietly in an art gallery and belong. "Lila," Claire whispered, brushing the star pendant at his neck. "You're ready." The gallery buzzed with soft music and the murmur of conversations when they arrived. Candles flickered along the walls, casting shadows across framed canvases. The air smelled faintly of wine and fresh paint. The moment they stepped inside, Ethan's pulse skyrocketed. Every sound felt magnified, the click of his heels on the hardwood, the swish of fabric as people turned. He braced for stares, whispers, laughter. But none came. A hostess greeted them warmly, offering 2 glasses of champagne. "Enjoy the show, ladies." "Ladies." Again. The word left him dizzy. He accepted the glass with trembling fingers, following Claire deeper into the gallery. They wandered slowly past the paintings, Claire chatting casually about brushstrokes and colors. Ethan nodded along, too busy scanning the crowd. Couples laughed, friends clinked glasses, strangers leaned in close to admire the art. Not one pair of eyes lingered on him. Halfway through the room, Claire tugged him gently toward a large abstract piece splashed in blues and silvers. "Look at this," she whispered. "Doesn't it remind you of—" "Excuse me." The voice jolted Ethan. A woman in her 30s, stylish and confident, was smiling at them. "I just wanted to say, I love your blouse. It's so elegant." Ethan's breath caught. His voice trembled. "Oh, thank you." The woman winked before drifting away. Claire leaned in, her smile proud. "See? Not just acceptance. Admiration." The rest of the night unfolded in a blur of small victories. A nod from another guest. A polite "after you" as he stepped through a narrow walkway. A stranger complimenting Claire on her friend's lovely necklace. Each moment chipped away at the wall inside him. By the time they stepped back into the cold night air, Ethan felt lighter than he had in years. In the car, he stared out the window, whispering almost to himself. "They didn't just accept me. They saw me." Claire squeezed his hand. "Because you're worth seeing." Back at the apartment, Ethan lingered in front of the mirror, champagne still buzzing in his veins. The reflection staring back wasn't temporary anymore. It was undeniable. And for the first time, the thought of being just Ethan again felt incomplete. The morning after the gallery opening, Ethan sat at the kitchen table still in his pajamas, hands wrapped around a mug of coffee he hadn't touched. The lavender blouse and cream skirt from the night before hung neatly over the back of a chair, almost daring him to slip back into them. Claire padded in barefoot, hair messy, carrying her own mug. She leaned against the counter, watching him. "You're quiet." Ethan stared into the coffee, voice low. "Because I can't stop thinking about it." "About last night." Claire smiled. "Because it went well?" "Because it went too well." He looked up at her, panic flickering in his eyes. Nobody stared. Nobody questioned me. They just accepted me, complimented me, treated me like. He trailed off, shaking his head. "Like Lila," Claire finished gently. Ethan pressed a hand to his forehead. "And the worst part is I liked it. I liked it so much I don't want to stop." Claire crossed the room, setting her mug down. "Why is that the worst part?" "Because." His voice cracked. "Because that means this isn't just dress up anymore. This isn't just a game. If I keep going, if I keep letting Lila out, what happens to Ethan?" Silence stretched heavy between them. Claire's eyes softened. Maybe Ethan doesn't disappear. Maybe he evolves. Maybe Ethan finally becomes whole because he lets Lila exist too. He shook his head, tears pricking his eyes. "I don't know how to live like that. At work, with friends, with family. People know me one way. If they see me another," his voice faltered. "What if I lose everything?" Claire cupped his face, steady and sure. "Then you build something better. You already proved you can. Look at last night. Look at the cafe. Look at New Year's dinner. Every step you thought would break you didn't. It made you stronger." Ethan's throat tightened. "But what if I can't keep both? What if I have to choose?" Claire kissed his forehead, whispering, "Then choose what makes you feel alive. Because that's the only choice that matters." Later that evening, while Claire napped, Ethan stood in front of the mirror again. He pulled the lavender blouse over his head, adjusted the necklace, and stared. For the first time, he didn't whisper the name like a secret. He said it clearly, steadily. "I'm Lila." The sound didn't feel like play anymore. It felt like truth. And though it terrified him, it also filled him with a new kind of peace. The following Friday started like any other. Ethan worked his shift at the hospital, tired but steady, scrubs neat, clipboard in hand. Yet all day, one truth gnawed at him, the quiet declaration he'd made in front of the mirror. "I'm Lila." He hadn't told Claire. Not yet. But it pulsed in his chest with every heartbeat, impossible to silence. When he got home, Claire was already there, buzzing with that restless energy she always had before pushing him forward. She didn't waste time. "There's a little bar down the street," she said, pulling her jacket from the hook. Laid back, dim lights, live music. Perfect for Lila. Ethan froze. No. Dinner was one thing. A gallery was one thing. But a bar? That's different. Claire stepped closer, eyes unwavering. Exactly. Different. Which is why it's the next step. He shook his head, panic rising. What if someone from work is there? What if? Claire cut in firmly, you realize you can exist anywhere. Not just safe spaces. Not just curated moments. Anywhere. Ethan's heart thundered. He wanted to refuse. He wanted to crawl into bed and bury Lila under the sheets. But the memory of the mirror, of speaking her name aloud, burned hotter. Half an hour later, he stood in front of the mirror again, dressed in a simple black dress Claire had picked, paired with the lavender blouse's necklace and modest heels. The reflection staring back wasn't a disguise. It was Lila, trembling but unshaken. The bar was dim and warm, filled with low chatter and soft jazz. At first, Ethan felt every eye drilling into him, certain they saw through the makeup, the wig, the dress. He clutched Claire's hand so tightly his knuckles whitened. But then something shifted. The bartender greeted them casually, "What can I get for you ladies?" Without hesitation. A group at the next table laughed loudly at their own jokes, not sparing him a glance. The world went on. And then, the twist. "Ethan?" The voice sliced through the haze. He turned, blood running cold. It was Daniel, one of his co-workers from the hospital, standing near the bar with a drink in hand, squinting at him in the dim light. Panic surged. His throat closed. He knows. He sees through me. But Daniel just smiled, lifting his glass. "Didn't recognize you for a second. New look, huh? Looks good. Didn't know you were into live jazz." Before Ethan could stammer a reply, Claire jumped in smoothly. "This is Lila," she said, voice steady as steel. "My partner." Daniel blinked, then grinned wider. "Well, nice to meet you, Lila. Hope work hasn't been killing Ethan too much lately." He raised his glass again before heading back to his group, unfazed. Ethan stood frozen, his pulse roaring in his ears. Claire squeezed his hand, her eyes shining. "See?" she whispered. "The world didn't end. He saw you. He accepted you. Just like everyone else." Ethan sat down slowly, his body trembling, but not from fear anymore. From the realization that the secret was no longer just theirs. And for the first time, the thought didn't feel like the end of Ethan. It felt like the beginning of Lila. Weeks passed after the night at the bar, but the memory of Daniel's casual acceptance lingered like a spark Ethan couldn't put out. He had braced for disaster, humiliation, whispers at work. Instead, Daniel had smiled, raised a glass, and moved on. The world hadn't ended. The mask hadn't cracked. Instead, the mask had revealed something real. At home, Lila's presence was no longer an experiment. She was folded into their routines, sipping coffee in the mornings, laughing with Claire during late-night movies, even reading quietly in the powder blue dress on quiet Sundays. Claire treated her as more than a role. She treated her as someone alive, someone loved. Ethan still worked his shifts, still answered to his name at the hospital. But in the quiet moments, in the mirror, in Claire's smile, in the whisper of silk against his skin, he knew Lila wasn't just part of him anymore. She was him. And slowly, the fear of losing Ethan began to fade. Because maybe Ethan hadn't been whole on his own. Maybe Lila wasn't replacing him at all. Maybe she was the missing piece he had been searching for without knowing. One late evening, standing before the mirror, Ethan whispered the name one last time, then shook his head. Not whispered. Declared. "I am Lila." Claire appeared in the doorway, smiling softly. "Yes, you are." And for the first time, he didn't feel like he was pretending or hiding or playing a part. He felt like he was finally becoming. Not Ethan or Lila. Both. Whole. The beginning of something he no longer wanted to escape.